While we're in Mineral Wells, I met a young man named Gary. He was a bootmaker and a brother to a guy I knew there in Mineral Wells, and we got together and we decided that we wanted to get into the boot repair business. Just strictly boots, no shoes, nothing else, strictly boots. Most shoe shops don't go to a lot of trouble to work on cowboy boots any different than they do shoes. And I had some experience building boots, and he was a very experienced bootmaker, and we knew the difference, and we just thought there would be a market for someone to just repair boots, because we heard all the time different people having bad experience, shoe repairmen trying to repair cowboy boots. Now, I don't mean to be running down shoe repairmen, but making cowboy boots is completely different from what they're used to repairing. And I don't think anybody, a shoe repairman or anybody else, could effectively and repair cowboy boots right unless they had some special knowledge in that area. So we visited around, visited some shoe shops, boot repair shops, boot stores, when I said boot repair shop, I'm talking about boot makers, really, people that make boots but still do some repair on the side of boots. And Letty Brothers, for one, we went and talked to them, and they were having trouble keeping up with their boot repair because the same people that built the boots did the repair work also. And so they were so far behind on their boot making that they got really behind on the repair work. And so we went in and we talked to Wilson, and him and Gary talked, and he found out that Gary knew what he was doing on boots. Wilson was familiar with Gary's uncle in Oklahoma that had a shop. So Gary had some credibility, and I knew Wilson from just the saddle business, and so Wilson went along with us, and so we started doing his, and we started doing some Western stores. We would make a visit twice a week. We had a route worked out in Fort Worth, and we went to Western stores. We went to anywhere where, I don't remember us picking up at any shoe repair shops, but wherever we thought we could get somebody to take in repair work for us, they would take it in. We would come by once early in the week, pick it up, and bring it back that same week. And so we figured we had Fort Worth pretty well covered, and Dallas was a little bit too far away. We did go into the edge of Arlington and picked up some. And then I started looking down south of Minnesota. While we're in Mineral Wells, I met a young man named Gary. He was a bootmaker and a brother to a guy I knew there in Mineral Wells, and we got together and we decided that we wanted to get into the boot repair business. Just strictly boots, no shoes, nothing else, strictly boots. Uh, most most shoe shops don't go to a lot of trouble to work on cowboy boots any different than they do shoes. And I had some experience building boots, and he was a very experienced bootmaker, and we knew the difference, and we just thought there would be a market for someone to just repair boots, because we heard all the time different people having bad experience, shoe repairmen trying to repair cowboy boots. Now, I don't mean to be running down shoe repairmen, but making cowboy boots is completely different from what they're used to repairing. Uh, and I don't think anybody, a shoe repairman or anybody else, could effectively and repair cowboy boots right unless they had some special knowledge in that area. So we visited around, visited some shoe shops, boot repair shops, boot stores, boot, when I said boot repair shop, I'm talking about boot makers, really, people that make boots but still do some repair on the side of boots. And Leddy Brothers, for one, we went and talked to them, and they were having trouble keeping up with their boot repair because the same people that built the boots did the repair work also. And so they were so far behind on their boot making that they got really behind on the repair work. And so we went in and we talked to Wilson, and him and Gary talked, and he found out that Gary knew what he was doing on boots. Wilson was familiar with Gary's uncle in Oklahoma that had a shop. So Gary had some credibility, and I knew Wilson from just the saddle business, and so Wilson went along with us, and so we started doing his, and we started doing some Western stores. We would make a visit twice a week. We had a route worked out in Fort Worth, and we went to Western stores. We went to anywhere where, I don't remember us picking up at any shoe repair shops, but wherever we thought we could get somebody to take in repair work for us, they would take it in. We would come by once early in the week, pick it up, and bring it back that same week. And so we figured we had Fort Worth pretty well covered, and Dallas was a little bit too far away. We did go into the edge of Arlington and picked up some. And then I started looking down south of Mineral Wells, Cleburne and Dublin and down that direction. So I started down there and picked up enough Western stores that was willing to take in the repair work, and they made a little bit off of it, and we made a little bit off of it. So I worked up a pretty good route. It'd take me nearly all day to make that route. And so between the Fort Worth route and that route, I pretty well stayed on the road most of the week while Gary did the repair work. I'd come in at night and tear down for him and pull heels off, pull soles off, and all he'd have to do is do the repair work and put them back together. And we never did get it. We made fair. I don't think we ever got up to the point where we was making a good living at it, but I at this minute I don't recollect how long we worked at it, but we went at it probably about a year, and we figured that we had got it up going as much as it was going to go, and it just wasn't doing what we expected of it. And when we started out, we decided that we would set a goal for ourselves, and if it didn't meet that goal, then we would just quit. Because we felt like it had to do something worthwhile for us to food with it. So at the end of a year, it wasn't meeting that goal. So we let everybody know a month ahead of time that we was going to quit. So that last month went pretty slow, but we did stay with it, and to the point where we said we would. And Gary went back to his uncle's in Oklahoma, I think, and started making boots again. And by that time, I was already dabbling in equipment a little bit, so I got in earnest with that and started traveling in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and buying shoe shops that was coming available. Seemed like about that time there was a lot of elderly people. Most of them were immigrants. They come in and set up a shoe shop, repair shop, and it seemed like there was a generation there that was kind of fading out and selling off their shops. And I like to deal in cash. And I was really bad about it back then. I didn't like to write checks, and I didn't like to take checks. But so I would carry, when I'd leave on a trip, I would carry cash, and I would pay for the shops in cash. And I went to this one shop, and I don't remember how I found out about it, but I found out about it, and I called them and told them I'd say I'll be there at a certain time, and I was fixing to make a trip up into Ohio. And so I went in and looked at the shop and made them an offer, and they said, and I told them, I said, I've got the cash on me to pay you. I said, I won't be giving you no hot check or anything. And so they agreed. And I loaded it up, and nearly all that time, well, I don't remember anybody ever going with me. I went and I loaded. I had a trailer most of the time, sometimes just a pickup, but most of the time I had about a 16-foot flatbed trailer. And I would load up a little shop on that trailer by myself, using pulleys and dollies and rollers and stuff. And I took that shop back to Mineral Wells and was working on it, and I was talking to somebody a little after that, and they asked me what I was working on, and I told them, and they said, well, where'd you get it? And I told him, and he said, he said, what'd you pay for it? And I told him, and he said, says, I was in there, and I offered them about $1,000 more than what you bought it for, and they wouldn't sell it to me. And I asked him, I said, well, was you going to write him a check or pay him cash? He said, well, I was going to write him a check. And I found out early on that the older people, they still didn't trust checks a whole lot. And these were elderly people. They were concerned that somebody was going to rip them off. And I guess when I went in and offered them cash, well, that felt good to them, and so they sold it. But he just couldn't believe that I bought it for $1,000 under what he offered them for it. So I felt good about them feeling good about dealing with me, and that I got a good deal. Um, I never did pay a whole lot for a shop because I was going to have to. I just treated every shop as that I was going to have to rebuild everything, and most of the time I did, because it was equipment that they had bought, possibly new or possibly used, and when they bought it, and sometimes they kept it up, and sometimes they didn't. Um, I saw a shop for sale, and there was a magazine called Shoe Service Magazine, and I watched that all the time. And see a shop for sale, and I'd call them and talk to them, especially with this up in Ohio and Pennsylvania and up in that area. Um, so I saw this shop for sale, and I called, and talked to a lady and started asking questions. She said, "Well, let my husband talk to you." Well, I could tell that he had a problem talking, and come find out later he had had a stroke. Well, he started telling me about how new most of this stuff was, and it was just wasn't used hardly at all, and the patch machine was just weeks or months old, and he said everything is in good working shape. And I told the lady, then finally I got back to the lady, and I told her, I said, it's going to be 3 weeks at least before. It was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I said, it's going to be at least 3 weeks before I can get up there. I had some stuff to deliver in Texas, and it was just going to take me that long to get there. And I said, if you'll hold it for me, I'll be there. Because it did sound real, after talking to him and then seeing what they asked for, it sounded like a real good deal. So she said, okay, I'll hold it for you. Well, that was stretching. I'm on her part. I knew that was stretching it, but I appreciated her doing that for me. And I got up there and found the shop real easy. It was down on the river. But went in, and that was the filthiest, most run-down shop I believe I had ever seen. They were still running hot wax on the sole stitcher. Hot wax all over that thing. The sewing machine that was supposed to be just a few months old it was on its last leg. It was an old F100 or a 100 line finisher. That was old. But it was the type that most of the bootmakers wanted to use. So, but it was, that knocked the price down a bunch. And the price that she was asking and the price that I figured I could pay for it was a couple of $2,000 or $3,000 difference. And so I told her, I said, ma'am, I cannot buy this shop. It is not what your husband told me it was. And she kind of hung her head, and she didn't say anything about her husband, but I found out through conversation with her that he had had a stroke. He didn't remember things quite right, and he was probably remembering when it was that kind of shape, and it just wasn't what it was right then. So I told her, she said, well, I've held it for you, and I've turned down 2 or 3 people. And I said, well, I really hate that, and I'm really sorry, but I said, your husband told me it was something else, and it's not. I said, this equipment is not near what he told me it was, and that's what I was going by when I agreed to, that I wanted to buy it. And she finally said, well, okay. And I said, well, I know 1 or 2 people that I'll call and tell them about the shop. And so I did, but I don't think either one of those people bought the shop. They run against the same thing I did. I don't know how long, if they, I don't know when they sold it and how much they sold it for. But the lady did not want, she was still trying to let her husband take care of business, and he wasn't able to take care of business. Now, whether it was because she felt sorry for him and wanted him to have that responsibility and feel more important, to feel like he was carrying his part of what he should be doing, I don't know. But it didn't work out for me very good. And it didn't really work out very good for me when I got ready to leave there. I had come through 2 tunnels to get to the shop. And so when I started, I was driving a pickup, pulling a 16-foot flatbed trailer. It was empty. I started back out, and I thought I was following the same route that I come in on. And I might have been, except when I crossed over the bridge, going across the river, and started into a tunnel. Well, I got about 200 or 300 feet into that tunnel, and there was a huge sign hanging from the ceiling of the tunnel that says, "If you can read this, you're going the wrong way." And so there was very little traffic, and I started backing that trailer out of there, and I got it out. There was a road that kind of veered off to the left and went around, looked like it went around this hill, but it was a tunnel going through a huge hill. And so I started around that way, and somewhere before I got to the top, that turned into a one-way street going the opposite direction I was going. I didn't stop. I just kept on going. Luckily, there wasn't a policeman around. And I come out on top of that hill. And it was a high hill, big old high bluff. And I never did figure out why they decided to put that tunnel through that thing and not go around it. But anyway, I pulled out on top. And by that time, I was getting confused. And wasn't nothing looking right on my map. And there was one guy. This was a big lookout on top of this mountain, this hill. And there was one guy sitting out there looking out over the city. And I walked up to him and I asked him, I said, "Can you tell me how to get out of this town?" And he just died laughing. And he gave me directions. In the meantime, I had took a call from Evelyn. I called home. Well, I called home. And she said, "There is a man in Danbury, Connecticut, it's interested in that machine you've got on your truck." I had a machine that had been rebuilt, and it sat and didn't sell, so I thought, well, I'll take it with me, and maybe. And I had run an ad also in the Shoe Service magazine on it. And this guy in Danbury, Connecticut called and said that he was interested in the machine if I could deliver it. Well, I called him and talked to him, and he said, well, wanted to know about it, and I told him, and I told it had been completely rebuilt, and it was an older machine, but it had been completely rebuilt, and so therefore it wasn't a real high priced machine. And so he said, "Okay, if you'll deliver it, I'll take it." I said, "Well, if you'll pay for the expenses of delivering it, I'll bring it to you." I said, "How long will it take me to get there?" And he said, "Oh, a couple of hours." And I said, "Okay, I'll be there." Well, I drove about an hour and a half, and it doesn't take very much intelligence looking at a map to tell it I wasn't going to get there in 2 hours. So I stopped at a roadside park and called it, and I said, "Are you sure this is going to take 2 hours?" He's kind of laughed, and he said, "Well," said, somebody told me after I hung up that it was going to take about 5 or 6 hours, and this is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Danbury, Connecticut.